Hi, Valerie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me. You have so many titles. Can you just go through and talk about what you do?
Yes. So, in a nutshell, I'm an anxious attachment specialist and trauma informed somatic coach. So, ultimately, just what that means is I help people who have an anxious attachment style to heal it so they can develop a more secure attachment style. So, this means less anxiety in relationships, they're healing their trauma, and just creating more security and trust and self love within themselves. And that reflects with their partner.
That's amazing. Did you get into that because you saw a lot of anxious attachment around you?
Yes. So for me, like how my journey really began and started was I was deeply struggling with generalized anxiety disorder. And so as I dove deeper into my own healing journey, I realized, oh, it's more about the symptoms of my anxious attachment at that time was low self-esteem, really just crazy anxious when my partner wouldn't respond to me or like wouldn't message me back in a certain amount of time, just stuck in my head. And then I realized, a lot of this is just coming from how I relate and how I've attached to partners based on my relationship with my caregivers because both of my caregivers were very emotionally unavailable. So that created this anxious attachment blueprint.
That makes perfect sense. I would categorize myself in that boat too sometimes. And I see it
Mm.
around me a lot as well. If you had to like put a definition on anxious attachment, what would it be?
So I like to just describe it as you feel very anxious in relationships. So you'll overthink, you'll have low self esteem, you'll get very triggered when your partner doesn't respond to you. You may feel like you can't trust your partner. Maybe you struggle with trusting your partner, jealousy, and really, but it all comes down back to our own nervous system. Meaning, if we're chronically anxious in our day to day life, we're most likely going to bring that into our relationship. So, what I really work with clients is helping them to heal the trauma that has created and formed this anxious attachment to begin with. So, can I share a little bit more about that? Like how that gets
Please.
formed? Yes. So what happens is when you have an emotionally unavailable parent, maybe they are inconsistently meeting your needs or they don't at all, the child learns to become hypervigilant, hyper attuned to their caregiver. They'll abandon their needs to make sure that their parent so that they can meet their parents' needs. They'll people please. And so because those emotional needs are being unmet or inconsistently met, who wouldn't feel anxious? Like who wouldn't feel anxious if your emotional needs aren't getting met? So then what ends up happening is since this person never got their needs met as a child, now we're left with feeling unsafe because these needs aren't being met. So now our safety becomes externalized, meaning now our safety is in the hands of our partner. If my partner isn't telling me he loves me 10 times a day, I'm going to feel very anxious. I'm going to be looking for him to validate my worthiness and meet my needs because I don't know how to meet them for myself because I was never shown how to meet those needs. So that's really how it gets formed and that creates this deep fear of abandonment because if we can't meet these needs for ourselves and our partner feels like our only source of meeting these needs, who wouldn't feel terrified and anxious in their relationships?
That's so true. And do you think there's like a timeline that correlates with that? Do you think it's like, oh, only if a relationship is brand new, maybe you're super anxious, but then like the person commits to you, they put a title on it, some time
Mm.
has gone by, you're committed to each other. Does it go away? Or if you're anxious attachment, like if that's just the box that you're in, you're just going to carry that no matter what your partner does?
Mm. So I feel two different answers with this. So attachment styles are not fixed. If you have the right healing tools, absolutely you can heal and develop a secure attachment style. The worst thing you can do is you're listening to this, you're like, I know I'm anxiously attached, but I'm going to do nothing about it. That is time does not heal wounds. Doing the inner work does. And so when you avoid doing that inner work, because of a plethora of reasons, that's when you will always feel this way. But to answer your question as well, you can notice more anxieties and stressors in early stages of dating just naturally because things are more uncertain. You don't know them well enough yet. You don't know what pushes their buttons well enough yet. And so it's normal for there to be a little bit of fear or worry or a little bit of that nervousness at the beginning. So that also is normal, but if it's like chronic and you're really noticing these patterns, it could have to do with something within you. But also, if you are someone who's anxiously attached, you most likely are probably attracting people who are emotionally unavailable because like we said, you're also attracting a familiarity. It feels familiar. It feels safe to our caregivers. So because it feels safe, our alarm bells don't ring off. Or we feel this is where the anxious attachment part comes in. We feel we can fix them. They have potential. They can change. All of these stories. And that's what keeps us stuck in these dynamics because of these unhealed wounds from childhood. But also, to answer another aspect of your question, if you are anxiously attached and you have a very healthy, secure partner, you will naturally start to develop a more secure attachment style because they're showing you, hey, I can trust you, I care about you. You're now refamiliarizing that. But we can't just choose healthy partners because if we're used to avoidant or emotionally unavailable partners, our body won't feel safe to be with a healthy, secure partner. It will actually self sabotage it. So that's why doing this work is so crucial in your dating life, in my
Yeah, you
opinion.
probably saw me like react when you said that anxious people are always attracted to like avoidant people because I was going to bring that up next. Do you
Mm.
feel like it's a subconscious thing, like an anxious attached person is just out in the world and like moth to the flame finds the avoidant style people?
That's a fabulous question. Yes. It's because like I said earlier, right? Like our nervous system, our body, our brain hates unfamiliar. It hates uncertainty. It hates change. So what our body does is it finds safety in familiar. And if your parent was abusive, neglectful, inconsistent in meeting your needs, you're going to feel safe with someone who does the same thing, and that will most likely be an avoidantly attached partner. And so, avoidant and anxious attachers, they both have the same wound of fearing abandonment. It just shows differently with different coping mechanisms.
Ooh, that's interesting. And then what would you say? Because with avoidant people, and I know people like to throw these labels around so much these days, like we are living in this pop psych time where everyone's like, I'm anxious, he's a narcissist, da da da. Like you just hear these terms so much. Like what kinds of behaviors would you actually say clinically mean someone's avoidant attachment style?
Yes. So someone who's avoidantly attached, they will fear intimacy. They're always going to keep things surface level, their conversations. They're going to sabotage the relationship because it feels too uncomfortable. Like to them, closeness feels suffocating. It feels too much. It feels scary. So how a avoidant attachment can really occur, and this is how it really happens, is their caregivers were dismissive, cold, or emotionally unavailable to your bids for connection. And so the child interprets that as rejection. They learn to suppress their needs and becomes hyper independent. So now closeness and asking for help gets associated with pain. And since no one was there for them when they were in distress and they were anxious or feeling big feelings, they go into shutdown. So their feelings and needs get numbed out and they dissociate from them. So you can imagine when they're in their relationship, their partner who is anxious or anxious leaning or in general, even maybe someone who's securely attached and you're with an avoidant, and then you're bringing up emotions, someone who's avoidant, they're going to have a real hard time being with your emotions if they can't even be with theirs because they're so numbed out from them. So that's really how it shows up. And the more closer you try to get to them as the relationship progresses, the further along, they're going to want to pull away. And so an emotionally unavailable slash avoidant attached partner, they usually will feel like they want closeness maybe the first few months. And then once they get to the 3 to 6 month period, their mask will slip and then they'll say they're not ready. This isn't the right fit because our attachment wounds have been triggered.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Oh, sorry, my dog.
That's
Monty. Shh. Okay. Uh, it's like I have to keep him in the room. Hey, shh, shh,
okay.
sit. Okay, good boy. I'll cut that out.
That's okay.
So I want to stay on the avoidant attachment for a little bit longer. As far as healing that, does that person have to heal it by working with their parents or their like source of causing the attachment wound, or can you heal it without your parents?
Absolutely, you can heal without your parents. If you are someone with an avoidant attachment style, the last people you probably want to be around is your parents because they're the ones who caused the trauma or traumas. And so I actually don't recommend that. Like, and even if you're anxiously attached, if we want to say it that way, you can absolutely heal within yourself and with healthy relationships. And that goes for both ways. But great question.
Thank you. Yeah, because let's say you get one of these people in your practice.
Mm-hmm.
What's a good first step for someone who's like trying to get a hold of this stuff, who's even trying to figure out like, am I in this category?
So for me, it's not really about labels. Well, obviously, I can attest and see, and usually they will be aware and be like, yeah, I definitely am more avoidantly attached versus I'm very anxiously attached. First, no matter if it's avoidantly attached people or anxiously attached people, the first thing to healing your nervous system and healing your attachment style so you can become more secure is learning how to be with and process your emotions. If we want to talk about avoidant attached people who are avoidantly attached, their feelings, they're so numbed out and suppressed, they're not in contact with them. So what we want to do is we want to first build safety so that the emotion in their body so that the emotions don't feel as overwhelming. So, and this is something that anxiously attached people can use as well, is something called pendulation. So this is a trauma informed technique that helps people to process big overwhelming feelings. If you are avoidantly attached and you have a big emotion, you're very numbed out, and the last thing you want to do is process it. So, what I first start with people is what if we could be with this anxiety, for example, for 30 seconds? Or maybe you feel suffocated by your partner. What if we could just be with that feeling that you're noticing in your body for 30 seconds, starting there? And then we shift to either you can look around the room. This is something called brain spotting. You can look around the room and find a safe spot. So you look around the room and you notice, oh, I feel safe in my body. I feel a bit more okay in my body when I look at this picture that my friend painted for me. So we start with 30 seconds of the anxiety, for example, or suffocation feeling for my partner, and then 30 seconds of looking at this safe spot or finding a safe spot in my body. Maybe you feel your feet being planted on the ground, they feel grounded, and then you're placing your focus and attention on that. So that's a first step I always walk through with clients. And if your therapist or coach isn't teaching that to you, it's going to be hard to do deeper processing or heal your attachment style if you can't be with your emotions. So this helps us to build capacity to be with emotions so that we're not overwhelmed by them and go back into our shutdown state if you're avoidant leaning.
I love that because that's so hands-on and with those tools with like grounding and what you just talked about. So that's like if someone's already feeling the emotion, are there tools that serve as preventative measures so you don't even have those big emotions?
Mm, that's a fabulous question. I feel like we're all human beings and we're all going to have stressors in life. And so we all have big emotions. And so but a good preventative thing I would say is to process your emotions every single day. So I have a meditation in my bio that combines somatic exercises to help you feel safe in your body, mixed with helping you to get in touch with these emotions so you can process them, soothe yourself. This is a big thing for both avoidantly attached people, more for anxiously attached, but they struggle with self soothing because they never learned how to do that. So my meditation teaches you step by step exactly how to do that. And as so to answer your question, that will be preventative in nature, and the emotions won't feel as big as they typically would because you're already in the process of doing it. When we're ignoring our internal world, things are going to be much, much bigger if we're avoiding, because anything we resist, we persist.
Oh, I got goosebumps from that. I love that. Do you have a piece of dating advice that you feel like people should know, but that we never hear?
I have lots of dating advice, but one that we never hear, maybe this is just a thought that comes to my mind. People who are anxiously attached, they will rush into relationships, and people say like, "Oh, you guys move really fast." Like that's kind of a red flag. To someone who has an anxious attachment style, it's not a red flag because it soothes their abandonment wound. So, what you want to do in dating is take it fucking slow. I know that sounds, if
Yes.
you have an abandonment wound, that sounds like death, and it feels awful because you're uncertain and you're fearful, and love bombing feels amazing. It soothes those emotional neglect, like of times when you're emotionally neglected, or your beliefs of fear of not feeling good enough. But going slow really helps you to not get as sucked in or attached. Okay, I think I also have another thing I'd love to add with that
Please.
is I'd love to add this. Do not have sex with someone. If you're a woman listening to this, do not have sex with someone until you are officially committed to them. Why?
Oh,
Because yeah, this is hot top. This is some hot tea, hot dating advice here. Because this is scientifically proven that women attach and release oxytocin bonding hormones when they are in sexual intercourse. So you will prematurely attach to someone. You will want to date them more because our body is physiologically responding to that as it should, because it believes that we should be attaching to this person. We're making a baby with this person. But, if you're just getting to know someone and dating them, that will really help you to not overlook their red flags.
I love that. It's funny because I myself believe that too, but in this world of you don't want to come off as like not being sex positive or kind of having like a more egalitarian view of things. Like, well, the guys can do that, so why can't the ladies do that too? But I think there is something to that that our like lizard brain just assumes that we're making a baby every time. And so it's like, well, is he going to be around to protect me and my baby? He's probably not if you just met him tonight.
Absolutely. And listen, this isn't about a place of shame. If you have done that, because we're human, we're wired to connect. It feels good. Like, hey, I hear you 1,000%. But if you're figuring this out, this will really help you because men don't have that same response with women. They don't have that same response in their brain as women do. And so, like, for example, I made that mistake myself where I went on a date with this guy and he was in the military, and he told me like we're gonna go on a date, whatever. And then I was like, I'd hook up with you. Like, why not? Like, I was really attracted to him. It went really well. Like, we knew each other well before, but this was our first date. And then he was like, listen, like, we can't go past this. Like, it's never going to move past this because I'm in the military, yada, yada, yada. He didn't want to do long distance, yada, yada. And we got physical. And I literally remember wanting to date him after that. I wanted to hold his hand. I was so upset. I remember coming back home and telling my roommate at the time, I'm so sad. I wanted to date him so much. And then it's like, after a few days, I kind of, the veil lifted off of me. It wasn't about him. It's that I was engaging in that. Someone, I am someone who, I value commitment. I value someone who's emotionally available. I value security in relationships. You can't do that if you're not officially committed at that point. And so I was overlooking red flags because that happened. And so you want to avoid that if possible.
Yeah, that's really solid advice. And I think when it comes to like having, yeah, we can hook up with people and never end up having feelings for them, but you never know, and just making that decision and then like, oops, I do have feelings for him now. It's like just play it safe, right? Especially for those of us looking to get into serious relationships and not looking for just a fling.
Absolutely. And honestly, anyone with an attachment wound, or if you're anxiously attached or you've had trauma, I don't think, like, sorry to say this, but I don't think it's helpful to be doing that in general. Not even coming from a place of shame. Like, I'm all about do what feels good for your body, but you're going to feel worse. You're going to feel worse. You're not going to feel good because you're going to want someone that you don't even know. And you just want to make sure that you're with the right person. Like, my friend got a divorce, $80,000. Okay. $80,000. That's a standard, like, that can be what a standard divorce can sometimes be costed. So it's like, what would you rather do? Receive support and help on dating? Maybe that's a few $1,000s or whatever, learning the skills on how to actually have a healthy relationship. Or we can avoid those things, avoid our traumas, avoid healing these attachment wounds, healing our attachment style. And then down the road, that's what ends up happening. And so we are so inundated and taught as a culture and society that when you are married, everything falls into place. But if you don't have those skills, you don't know how to be in a relationship, you don't know how to communicate in a healthy manner, you don't know how to soothe your own nervous system, you don't know how to self soothe, your relationships are not going to be healthy and secure. And so when you can learn those skills, you're going to be able to avoid so much heartache and money
It's
later
true.
on.
It's solid advice. Would you put a timeline on what's too soon to get engaged, to get married?
Ooh, I would say, ooh, what a great question. I would honestly say that is super dependent on you. I would say, like, I wouldn't get engaged to someone. If you're in your 20s to 30s, right? I would definitely avoid getting engaged with someone sooner than a year. Like, how do you really know someone under a year? Like, you want to see them in times of stress. Like, getting married is not something small. Like, this is someone that you're going to share all your meals with. You're going to travel with them. You're going to have really hard times with. Like, my grandparents just celebrated 60 years, their wedding anniversary, like a few weeks ago. And so it's like, I think about that, and it's like you want to be so careful with who you are choosing. And my grandpa, I was talking to him yesterday, and he was saying she is the sweetest, kindest woman I've ever met in my life. I am so lucky to have her. But they got engaged after 5 months.
Wow.
So, which is insane. But like, you just have to do what's best for you. But obviously, you want to know, how do they react to stress? How do they react to my feelings? How do they react to their own feelings? Can they handle my big emotions? How are they with kids? If you want kids, etc. This is not something to take lightly. And it's just something that really be cautious of thinking about. And for like moving in with someone, I would recommend waiting a year personally. I made a mistake of, years ago, I started dating a guy, and then 4 months later, we moved in together. And then a few months after that, we broke up, and it was such a mess and a shit show because I signed for a year-long lease. And it's like, if like you just really want to make sure that you know the person well before you go into deeper commitments of moving in, getting engaged, getting married.
I love that. I'm glad you spoke on that because I feel like I've heard, and without having scientific evidence to back it up myself, but the anecdotal evidence that I've heard is that you should wait at least 9 months to a year before any big decisions because that's like the quote unquote honeymoon phase, and that in those first 9 to 12 months, we're having this like biological response to the person where we're getting like extra amounts of like dopamine, and until that wears off, you don't even really necessarily know how you feel about that person.
Correct. 100%. And like I said earlier as well, like, you want to wait because a emotionally unavailable person or a narcissist, their mask will slip after 6 months. 3 to 6. So
Oh,
if you're moving in or making a big step of marriage before then, baby girl, good luck. Like, just avoid it if you can.
yeah. What do you think is the deal with people like friends of ours that get in relationships and then disappear, like abandon their friendships?
Mm. Dude, I was just talking about this with someone. That to me is just someone who maybe is more anxiously attached. I find that that's someone who loses themselves in relationships. They might isolate in relation, like when they have these relationships, maybe there's red flags and they don't want to say them out loud or let go of this person, so they'll let go of their friends as
Mm,
well. I think you also have to be careful because narcissistic or abusive types of people will isolate you away from your friends or family. So it's just being really careful. Like I'm all, even when I've been the most anxiously attached or anxious in relationships, I've always made that effort and commitment to stay in community, to stay with my friends, because I don't know what's going to happen with my partner. I want to make sure that I have a group of people that love and care for me and will go to the ends of the earth for me and make sure that I'm okay if something does go wrong. That's just my like own opinion on it.
I share the same one. We've all seen it happen, so I'm glad you had some insight to it. And that's a good, yeah, it is something to be weary of because you're right, like narcissists and people who are abusive in whatever category, like they do try to pull people away, and it's something to look out. Like you got to have your friends around because they're your anchors to reality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. Your friends are also where you can heal in relationships with. Like I was just with my best friend in Canada. She's one of my best friends and she is more avoidant leaning. She doesn't I don't feel that she resonates with all of the avoidantly attached signs, for example, but like messaging, she can feel really suffocated by like that's just more of an avoidantly attached trait. And so with her, she said, all my triggers came up with you. Like, I just, I'm feeling a bit more of that fear of abandonment. And that actually means this is applying to healthy relationships, of course. That means that, like, hey, this is happening for a reason. When you're in a safe space, those things are going to come up. And especially if you're anxious or avoidantly attached, all of our traumas and big emotions and wounds will resurface when we're in a relationship. No matter how much healing you do, no matter how secure, quote unquote, secure you are, when we can't heal in isolation. We also have endured traumas through relationships. So we also heal through relationships.
Do you know about burned haystack method?
No, I've never heard that about this. I'd love to know more.
Okay, so it's this dating method that I've recently learned about, and it's what it sounds like. If you're dating, you're trying to find the needle in the haystack, so you want to burn all the hay around it. So it advises that you just date as much as possible, but that you also like write off people very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
was curious what you think of that and if that is something that might even work for an attached or like an anxiously attached person.
What a great question. I didn't know that that was like a term. So love that you educated me on that. I personally am single in the moment and I'm doing that as well. But since I've healed my anxious attachment and I go slow with people, I do not overlook red flags. I have my standards high. So naturally you will get less matches, less dates, and you will write off people quicker because you're more honest, you're being more authentic. Like my best friend always says, say no to the wrong person quicker and the right person will be you'll attract that much faster because that's true. And so I think anxiously attached folks, they can put all their eggs in one basket. They will put all their eggs in one basket. They'll think in their mind after one date that they are committed to this person after one date when they don't even know this person. And so that can really make things harder. So I highly recommend, if you can, if you have the option, to do that method that you mentioned of dating as many people as you can and keeping your standards high and saying no quicker. No, like, oh, they can change. I'll give them a chance. Like, if someone isn't up to your standards, don't waste your time. This is me literally calling out my younger version of myself. Like, Just trust me on that. So I think that's a great method to use and I highly recommend it.
I love that. Why do you think ghosting has become so normalized?
Ghosting, I believe, has been so normalized because we haven't learned how to process and sit with our uncomfortable feelings. If I can't sit with my own anxiety and discomfort, of course I'm going to want to ghost you because I don't want to feel maybe your tension or your discomfort. And maybe a part of me feels that I'm responsible for your emotions. So if you give me a bad or negative response or you're upset, I might feel responsible for that. So I really believe that that's a huge thing. Why ghosting is such a big thing and why it's so prevalent in today's society.
Yeah, is there any point like where it's acceptable?
Yes, yes. If someone's unsafe, if they're lying about their identity, if they're catfishing you, if we're talking about the dating space, if you're ever unsafe. And I feel also like if you maybe just met someone on a dating app and maybe you've had a few messages back and forth, like that was it, and you're starting to notice some red flags, and you're like, this is a big red flag, it just doesn't seem right to even continue this conversation, then I feel like that could be an okay way to do it. But my motto is like, you just don't know until you communicate with someone. Obviously, there are many exceptions of the ones that I mentioned for sure.
Ooh, do you have any tips for getting over someone?
Ooh, any tips for getting over someone? So I actually just made, have you heard of EFT tapping?
I have, yeah, but explain what it is anyway.
Yeah, so EFT tapping, if you're listening to this and you don't know what that is, it helps to release a lot of the stuck energy and emotion by tapping on certain meridian points in your on your body. So it stands for emotional freedom technique. It really gives you what it sounds like. I've made EFT tapping for overwhelming emotions, for anxiety, and then I just made one for an EFT tapping meditation for letting go of your ex. Really, letting go of your ex can feel absolutely impossible because like we said earlier, you will attract and date people until you do this inner work that remind you of your parent. So when you're letting go of your ex, it feels impossible and earth-shattering because it's reminding you of the same attachment that your inner child had to your parent. And so it's going to feel incredibly painful because when you're 3 years old, you can't walk away from your parent. And so you might feel horribly heartbroken, especially if you have beliefs that I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy of love. You feel, oh, this was my one chance at love. These stories that you're telling about yourself is going to make it harder to let go of someone. And writing down, another thing, writing down as soon as the breakup is over with, because you're going to tell yourself, and your mind like chemically wants to remember all the good times because it wants to take you away from pain and move towards pleasure. So what you want to write down is write down every single thing about your ex that you didn't like, what didn't work, things that you won't settle for again that was in that relationship, that will help you get out of that vortex. But ultimately, it can feel really painful because it's reminding us of our abandonment wound from childhood. And so I utilize something called brain spotting because brain spotting helps to release the stuck trauma and emotions that are stored in our body and helps to release them. And then you automatically move on from your ex and you let go of them. So, for example, I had a client, she was in a healthy, secure, beautiful marriage, but she noticed she was frequently thinking about an ex of hers. And he even messaged her. They were messaging back, and she was saying, no, like, this is wrong. I never want to do this to my husband. I love my husband. But a part of her was self sabotaging because her ex reminded her of her caregivers that were neglectful, emotionally unavailable, hot and cold behavior. And so what we did is we did a brain spotting session around this, and it really just reminded her of a memory. It brought up a subconscious memory of when she was 4 years old and her mom left. And her mom never came back after that because her mom was a drug user and she overdosed. And so of course your brain and your body is going to remember that memory and it's going to show up in your romantic relationships. She was sobbing almost like half the session because she was releasing so much stuck energy and emotion that was so ingrained and stuck in her body. So after that, she literally felt okay to block him and she never talked to him again. And things have never been better in her marriage.
Wow. So there is hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When things feel impossible and feel too big for you to handle, it's not coming from your adult true self. It's coming from an inner child part of you that's been suppressed from that time. Because if you were 4 years old and that happened and your mom left, that's and maybe no one was there to support you through that. Those emotions get stuck in that body, in your body, and you feel like now when you're 34 years old, cutting off this relationship, you feel the same way as you did when you were 4. So it feels so big because it's being reactivated. So when we heal these wounds, we heal our relationships, our life, everything.
Do you think that people should be severing all ties to their exes? Obviously, not if there's like kids involved, but if there's no kids, there's no finances. Should we be severing? Should we be like unfollowing and blocking? Like, what's the level of communication that should still be open between exes?
So I'll just share like my own personal opinion and then like some examples. I feel everyone has to do what's best for them. But in my opinion, I've never kept in contact with any of my exes. I unfollowed them. And my last relationship, we ended on healthy, good terms. But I don't want to be constantly reminded of you when I'm looking at my stories, when I see your name up on my Instagram, like we're not together anymore. I don't want you to continue to look at my stuff. Like I want to move on. I don't want to constantly be reminded of our relationship. I want to keep my love for you in a healthy way. I don't want I just feel like it's not necessary. Like unless you have kids or financial or maybe you work together and it has to be what's the word? Like it has to be cordial,
Mhm.
but that's just my opinion though. Like everyone's different. Some people say that they can be friends with their ex. It's sticky unless one or both of you, like one of you most likely has feelings. And so I just feel it's better to cut ties. But if you have kids or finances, work, that's completely a different story. What are your thoughts
Well,
on that?
I haven't formed my thoughts on that because I do think it's per situation, and I've experienced both. I've experienced where I genuinely am on fantastic terms with someone. The breakup, wasn't heinous. It was totally amicable, and I can stay supporting that person from a distance, and they can stay supporting me from a distance. And I think when I'm sure that I don't have feelings anymore, then it doesn't bother me to like still be following someone and still be like watching their stories and having them pop up on mine. It's when I still have feelings that I'm like, this is troublesome and this is me hanging on to some, little shred of hope that they'll come back around and things will be different.
Yes, absolutely. And I agree with that mindset. Absolutely. And also, like, if you notice you're over your ex, you let go of them, you don't like them anymore, you've lost your attraction to them, maybe you've done inner work and you notice I'm looking at my partner, like my ex partner's page all the time. I'm looking at it. Notice what your state is. Typically, when you are in a shutdown or freeze nervous system state, meaning you are depressed, your body will do whatever it takes with the knowledge that it has to try and get you out of it. So if you've had a relationship with someone and maybe it was toxic or it didn't end well, you might see their picture and it might flood you with cortisol, adrenaline, stress hormones. So after, if we want to talk about polyvagal theory, there's freeze, which is the bottom of the ladder, which is a depressed state, the middle, which is fight or flight, sympathetic activation, anxious, you're angry, and then the top, which is ventral vagal, which is we're grateful, we're in connection, we're calm, we're regulated. So we need to actually move up the ladder. So our body will literally tell us to go look at this person's profile to get us out of shutdown. But if we don't know that, we think, oh, they're just my soulmate. I can't move on. No, your body's literally just trying to get out of shutdown.
Ooh.
She ate with that.
Absolutely. I'm like, I need a second to like process that. That's unbelievable. It's just so hard, I think, like the to get the willpower to like fully move on from somebody when you know you are going to get those like adrenaline hits from looking at their things. But I mean, just knowing the science of why and what's going on with the body is like so like you just be keyed into it. If we're keyed into what's going on inside it, but it's like easier said than done, right?
Absolutely, because willpower isn't helpful for us when we're dysregulated, when we're anxious. Those triggers come up. Our logical part of our brain literally turns off. So that's why teaching people the tools of how to feel safe in their body and to regulate out of those states, that's going to be the ticket out of toxic relationships. That's going to be your ticket to healing your anxious attachment style. And that's going to stop you from going on their page to look for that. And I literally have made a meditation to help people stop craving for their ex and to stop craving looking at their ex's social media because it's a big, big issue.
It really is. It's remarkable how normalized that's become because like 50 years ago you broke up with someone, you just never saw them again. It was so simple.
Agreed, agreed. And your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. So when you're looking at that picture, you feel like you're with them and it gives you that same hit.
Wow, extraordinary. What would you say are techniques? Because I feel like the immediacy, like in that first stage of a breakup, when the feelings are so intense and so overwhelming, like what tools can people use to at least like calm down a little bit in that immediate aftermath of a breakup? Because it's like pure grief.
It is. It is really, I would say for me, is I would allow myself to really sit and process for 10 minutes the grief, like with my last breakup, because if not, I would just get wallowed in it and I would feel stuck in it and get stuck in my stories. So after doing that, just starting with 10 minutes, can I sit with this for 10 minutes, put on some music, co regulate, hugging a pillow? I have specific somatic exercises for grief. And so, like, doing a self hold and sway, these are all things that are going to scientifically like help you to reduce cortisol, reduce stress. You know, when you, I know this sounds weird, but when you hug yourself or like just like self touch, it literally reduces stress in the body. It's giving you like that physical touch need that you probably have gotten from your last partner. It's how just those are some things that I would recommend if you're in the thick of it, if you're in the aftermath, getting good distractions as well, just starting out, working, meeting with friends, and then as you get deeper into it, making sure that you have a coach or a therapist to help you process the breakup, especially if it's with an avoidantly attached person, whether it's with a narcissist, that's a whole nother can of worms that you really need support with so that you don't become fearful of relationships in the future and you can feel ready to open up your heart again, but you have to learn those tools to do that. But yeah, those would be some tools that I would recommend in the thick of it. So listening to sad music, allowing yourself to be sad for those 10 minutes, hugging a pillow, self-holding and sway, rubbing your arms like from your shoulder to your elbows, that helps to reduce that cortisol and just really allowing yourself to feel it without putting a story on it that this is my one chance at love, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough. Notice the stories as those aren't the truth of who you are.
That's beautiful. Can you talk to me briefly about hypnosis?
Yes, so I utilize hypnosis a bit less in my practice, but I still love it. So our brain and our nervous system, all these things that we're talking about, you talked about willpower. So we have our subconscious mind and 5%. Okay, let me start over. We have our subconscious mind, our actions, our behaviors, our triggers, our traumas are living in our subconscious mind. And then we have our conscious mind. This is in charge of like your analytical thinking. So if you're listening to this podcast, if you're reading a book, if you're talking about your anxiety or you're talking about your breakup, those are things that target 5% of your conscious mind. So what So that's why so many people come to me and they feel so stuck because they're like, I've just seen talk therapists. I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not getting better. It's because they've missed the 95% that hypnosis allows us to dive deeper into. Hypnosis gets into that deeper part of our subconscious mind so that we can rewire it. And then I also like, if you it helps us to go back to the root. Say you want to work on this belief that I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough. Maybe this was triggered from a recent breakup you had. We guide your subconscious mind to take us back to the first time that you felt that way, because no every single baby, every single person is born secure and worthy. We learn these things. We learn to feel anxious. We to in order to feel safe and in control in relationships. We learn that we're not good enough based on emotionally unavailable parents or partners. And so when we look back at these scenes from our adult perspective, we learn, wow, like I can see how painful that must have been for this young child. We process the emotions. We ask, what beliefs have you made about yourself from this event? And we rewire it. We process it. We process these emotions that have been stored in our body, that our body have been carrying for 20, 30, 40 years plus. And then I make a new recording to rewire these subconscious beliefs. So you're anxious in relationships and you feel like you're unworthy of love. In that new recording, we're going to have you imagine your dream relationship, how you're going to feel, how you're going to act, what you're going to look like, how you're going to feel, what characteristics do you and this partner have, connecting with that higher version of yourself and putting in these new beliefs that I am worthy of love, I'm enough, you know, I am perfect just as I am. It's okay to make mistakes, etc., etc. Um, so that's really how I would explain hypnosis. It's a very, very powerful tool. It has helped me tremendously in my life reduce anxiety. I used to have chronic pain and I used to have fibromyalgia. Hypnosis helped me to completely get rid of. It
Wow.
completely got rid of fibromyalgia and it helped me greatly reduce my anxiety. And if you look on my website, you also see the difference between me now and what I looked like before. I also had cystic acne before I had hypnosis because it all had to do with my stress, my anxious attachment, my anxiety. And so when you learn how to deal with that in a healthy way, that's when everything starts to change in your life.
Can you break the disillusion for me of what being under hypnosis actually feels like? Because I think we all just have this cartoon image of someone swinging a clock, a pocket watch in front of your face, and then all of a sudden you're, mooing like a cow, but it's not really that, is it?
Correct. It's really not. That is like really more of like what stage hypnosis is. I do clinical hypnotherapy. So with clinical hypnotherapy, what we're doing is it feels very similar to, have you ever meditated before?
Yes.
It feels exactly like that. Maybe just a little bit deeper. And we naturally, right when we wake up and right when you go to bed, you are in a theta brainwave state, meaning you're very suggestible and in a hypnotic state. So I'm just guiding you towards that natural brainwave state. And so that's why I have you listen, why I have clients listen to a hypnosis recording, either right when they wake up or right before they go to bed, because our subconscious is always listening. And that's when we have less resistance and these beliefs will start to reform. You will have new beliefs about yourself and your self image, your confidence, all will shift dramatically. I've seen it before my very eyes. It's absolutely insane what hypnosis and what somatic therapy can do for you. Everything that I mentioned, it's just absolutely like mind boggling the results that I've seen in my life and my clients' lives.
What kind of people would you recommend for it?
For hypnosis,
Hmm.
so it depends on like what you're looking for, but people who are anxiously attached, if you have a lot of anxiety, I definitely recommend it. But I never start with hypnosis
Mm.
because if you're very anxious or you align and you feel you're anxiously attached, we have these protector parts of anxiety we feel like we need to control, and so it could feel harder and to dive deeper into that work, it's going to feel harder to relax into that because we're going to be overthinking. And so I always start clients out with reducing their anxiety, somatics, nervous system regulation. And so they're practicing that on their own, how to process their feelings. So that way, when we go into hypnotherapy, they're able to relax, they're able to get better results, they're able to go deeper into it, and we're able to just have them feel much calmer, safer in their body, and just overall happier, which is what we all want, really.
So, when someone is looking to change these anxious attachment patterns and they're like, oh, I gotta stop being so dismissive of people who feel so safe that we get the ick, right?
Mm,
Well,
mhm.
in order to get away from these avoidant types that the anxious babies are always drawn to, what would you say is like a good first step?
A good first step is becoming emotionally available to yourself. How do you do that? A first step, like I said earlier, you can get it at the link in my bio on my Instagram, is a meditation to help you self soothe and process your emotions. It's, I believe the one I have there, it's literally 13 minutes. And when you do this meditation every single day, you're connecting to your body, you're self soothing yourself, you're regulating yourself. Then when you go into relationships and you are with someone who's avoidantly attached, you're going to get the ick for them because they can't sit with your emotions, and you're not going to feel safe with them because you're becoming the securely attached parent to yourself by doing that, by processing your emotions. But if you are neglecting your inner world, if you're not processing your emotions, you're going to be attracted to someone who treats you the same way as you treat yourself.
I love that so much. Valerie Rubin, this has been a delight. Where can people find you and your work?
Thank you so much. I'm really here for Instagram. On Instagram, it's at Heal with Val, HEAL with VAL. You can get that meditation in the link in my bio. It's completely free. I just want people to heal, feel safe in their bodies, and to feel happy and present in their relationships, and to open up their heart to love. And so that is where they can find me. So thank you so much for connecting with me, for having me on the podcast today.
Of course. Thank you so much for doing it. Thank you, everybody. See you next time. Bye.